Hey everyone, welcome to the Dialogue Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to talk about setting goals for your life and what a goldfish, a dog, a horse, and a bear have to do with it. Check it out. We're going to pick this up right here. We were talking before we started recording, but I think this is important to add to the recording. So you can probably hear in my voice right now, I sound a little raspy, got a couple cough drops, got a little tea here, a little throat coat. We were talking about Jordan's flu game.
Yes, Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, the one and only.
Yep.
The GOAT. I know that some people are trying to dispute it. It is what it is. I said what I said. Also, we were talking about
Turns out he had food poisoning, by the way.
Ooh,
Yeah,
really?
the rumor.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So that's in the. Now we're back to.
We're revisiting The Last Dance.
The Last Dance.
I apparently didn't pay enough attention.
So that's why you should have watched it with me.
It's a good point. Touché.
Everyone thought he had the flu because he
Okay.
was throwing up and everything. But it turns out the night before the game, he ordered a pizza.
Ooh.
And they think there was foul play. They think that the pizza place knew it was going to Michael Jordan and gave him some bad cheese. And he was barfing and he had food poisoning.
First of
all,
all,
and he scored 30 some points. True story.
help me understand what mob pizza place is this that they just have bad cheese on hand that they're knowingly putting on.
That's what people do in Boston.
They put bad
put bad
yeah,
cheese
we got
in
the
Michael
bad
Jordan.
cheese in the back. That's not a good Boston accent.
I mean, I've heard better, but I've heard worse.
I wasn't sure how to nail that on the first attempt.
You want to try it again, or
I don't feel like that's a good idea.
You don't feel like it's going to get better?
Seriously though, do you just have bad cheese set aside specifically for we could throw this game?
I think in places like Boston, and by the way, I need to go on record. I'm not sure it was Boston. I don't remember exactly who.
He's not going to throw Boston under the bus.
Yeah, but I think there are people who are such fans that if they thought there was an opportunity to make Michael Jordan sick in the playoffs,
no, that
they would
part I
absolutely
understand.
do.
That part I understand, but Greg, I need you to take a step back even prior to that. Like once you get the order,
How do you get the cheese bad?
Thank you. You would have to have bad cheese set aside for just in case we get a chance to.
That's a good point. I mean, I doubt they have. I doubt they have bad cheese on demand or whatever. But what I would say is probably what they did was they probably knew they had some cheese that was gamey. They knew they had some cheese that was like borderline expiration. They're getting a call from Michael Jordan's people, and they go, "Let's throw this cheese in instead of the cheese that's hot off the press."
That's really horrifying.
I mean,
okay, what episode of The Last Dance was this on? Because this is my homework. I need to go back and watch this.
I don't know. We'll have to fill that in later. I don't know.
Wow. The more you know, live and learn. Okay, so Michael Jordan's food poisoning game just doesn't roll off the tongue the same way that
Michael Jordan's flu game.
Flu game just.
It's still known as that.
You know what I mean?
Which and the whole point of us even talking about that is you are under the weather today. You're not feeling good today. Right?
We delayed recording a day just so that
You've been coughing a lot all through the night. You got 2 halls on demand.
I isolated myself to the couch the last 2 nights because I knew my hacking would not allow for decent sleep.
You
for
traded
any
in
human.
your water for tea.
Yep.
And so, but yet you bit down and you said, I'm doing the podcast.
If people don't mind hearing my slightly more low, grovelly voice, then that's fine. We'll roll with it.
You feel like your voice, you could hit the low harmony right now. A little more.
Yeah, I definitely could. But here's the other thing that we were talking about with the flu game. I have definitely seen some, quote, flu game performances from you. Like on a Sunday morning or some of these moments of your life that you had big stuff going on and you were utterly miserable. Actually, it's Easter. This kind of brings back a memory from me a few Easters ago. Gosh, probably 7 years ago? Maybe more. We were living, no more. Gosh, because we were living on Brassey Avenue when you had that horrible, was it an ear infection or something?
Yeah, that's right.
You literally could not hear for weeks, right?
It was 2 weeks, yeah.
That was so bad. But I remember it was Easter time and you were in so much pain and also half deaf. Like your equilibrium was off, all kinds of stuff. You were a mess.
Probably the
but
worst.
You still powered through.
The worst was actually after I had one of the surgeries, and it was during that fight, the fight message, and I felt like no one could preach that last message but me. Like I needed to do it.
No.
So I was like, I had just had surgery like 3 or 4 days before.
Right.
So I was in a cast, and I just remember like I was on like pain meds. And so I was preaching on pain meds, and I was worried.
Don't preach on pain meds,
I know,
kids.
I was worried. I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done this. And I remember getting to the end of the message. I wasn't exactly sure what all I had said. I was hoping it was coherent. And I remember a really nice lady came up to me after that, and she was like, Pastor, that message changed my life. That was a word. Like, that really happened. I thought, thank God. Like, this really, that really was the power of the Holy Spirit, because I don't exactly remember what I said. But
so then at least you got to watch it back in post-production for the documentary. Which, by the way, that's another fun little aside. A lot of people probably don't know that. Greg Ford had a documentary. This was an interesting
shout out
moment.
to Nathan Crawford.
Yeah.
Nathan Crawford, he
pulled
worked,
it together.
He worked hard for that.
Well, but I mean, you did the fight. You did all that. Yes. Nathan, you did an amazing job. I appreciate you. Nathan slept in our guest room before there was really anything in it but an air mattress, because we moved in the middle of all that. And he was amazing. But you trained for, the better part of a year, right?
Yeah.
To do this boxing match. And you fought, and it was an incredible fight. Like, the proceeds of the fight went to charity, which was super cool. You had this whole message series that you did around the fights that people have in their lives, things that you're fighting for and what you're fighting through. And unfortunately, during the fight, which was insanely stressful for me, standing in the front row,
I'm sure
just
it was.
to be fair. Like, I can't imagine what it was like going in the ring, but I feel like sometimes it's almost worse for the people watching.
I think you're right.
Like, I know I have a harder time myself watching from the sidelines, watching someone else compete, than doing it myself, because you're nervous for them and it has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was worse for me. This is going
No, I
sideways
feel you.
fast.
No, it
I'm not
is.
saying it was harder on me in general.
It is.
You had tore a bicep.
Emotionally, I'm
but
in
yeah,
there.
the nail biting was like on 12 out of 10. It was so stressful. And you tore your bicep during the fight. And you were kind of still a little high on adrenaline after it was over. And I'm like, your arm doesn't really look right. And you're like, I mean, it's a little off, but I think it's okay. And over the course of the night, you could just like watch it go up your arm. I'm like, no, that's not good. You're definitely going to need to go to the doctor. And sure enough, you had to have surgery. And that was just one of many. That's our frequent flyer miles to the orthopedic surgeon. But that's for another day.
No regrets.
So let's move forward. That was some fun little side
Memory
bunny
lane.
trail topics. But I actually wanted to bring up a saying that you have that maybe people have heard you say this before, but I think it's a really fascinating thing when you talk about the types of goals that people have for themselves in their lives. And actually what made me think of it was you talked on a Sunday morning a couple weeks ago about Mount Everest, about people climbing Everest and getting summit fever. And I would encourage people to go back and listen to it if they get a chance, because if they haven't heard it, the message itself was incredible. But it really was an interesting take on when people are going for certain things in their life. Some things, it's not worth fighting all the way to that summit. Maybe that's not meant for you. Maybe you were meant to get to this certain height and you see it, and that's enough, and it's not worth dying over. But I think that as a society, sometimes we're taught it's like all or nothing, go big or go home. And sometimes people try to go big and they don't get to go home. And anyways, the saying that you have that I think is really great for helping people kind of identify like what they want to take on, what they want to bite off and chew, is you talk about raising a goldfish versus raising a dog versus raising a horse versus raising a grizzly bear. And you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear you unpack that a little bit and like what that's meant for you.
Yeah, so actually the analogy kind of was born in a conversation with our daughter, Ella. And, she's 15 and a couple years ago, it's fun watching her kind of size up her life and try to figure out what she wants to do. So when, she's kind of naturally ambitious. When she was little, she's like, I'm going to be the president of the United States. I'm going to be the first ever president. Yeah. And she's always had some sort of ambition that, whatever she thinks is great. So she watched the Shark Tank when she was like, 7 years old, 8 years old. And she'd
pitch us on stuff.
Yeah, she'd pitch us on ideas and, maybe I want to start my own business. Maybe I want to do this. So what I've wanted to do, I don't feel any need to control her life or push her toward anything. I just kind of want to be there as a guide to kind of ask her questions and help her count the cost of what she's doing. And so I came up with this analogy that I've used for myself. I've used a lot of people since then, but that's kind of where it started. So I talked about like, okay, if you liken your life to like having a pet, right, and taking on a certain pet. So if you have a goldfish life, right, that would be like pretty manageable. Goldfish, you can kind of put the food in. You can actually leave for a couple days, come back, all good, change the water, whatever. I'm not snuggling with it. Not necessarily lots of affection. You don't see like a huge emotional connection most of the time to a goldfish, but fairly easy to manage. Pretty much everyone's had a goldfish at some point in their life. Mm-hmm. Next, you have a dog life. A dog life would be lots of people have dogs. Depending on the size of the dog you have, what does it take to take care of that dog? What does it take to feed the dog? When you go out of town, you got to have a dog sitter. Mm-hmm. You're taking the dog with you or whatever. It's more of a higher maintenance animal, but a lot of people have them, so you can learn how to do that fairly easily. Mm-hmm. You just got to make sure you know what you're taking on. Does this dog shed or not shed? And make a good decision what dog you want to have. The next level of life is a horse life, right? So not a lot of people have horses. I mean, there are people with horses. Mm-hmm. You got to actually, it's pretty expensive, like a lot of work to take care of a horse. It's a big animal, a lot to clean up after, a lot to feed, a lot for an enclosure, for it to be able to, you got to buy some land. It's got to be able to move around and run and, all that kind of stuff. And so it's expensive. It's a lot to take on, but, you can kind of know how to do it. Mm-hmm. People can tell you how to do it. And the fourth kind of life is a grizzly bear life, right? You're like, hey, I want a bear. Like, I want a pet bear. Okay, well, how do you do that? I don't know, man. There's not a lot of people with bears. Like, a few. A lot of people will go, why in the world would you ever want a bear? Like, that's crazy. Like, why would you want a bear? I don't know. I want a bear. Like, I want a bear. So you got to look at your life and go, do I want this super manageable life? Which, by the way, some people, I don't shame people for that. There are some people that go, I know myself well enough to know I like to have my ducks in a row. This is what I feel is for me to do, and I'm going to have a goldfish. I know people like that, good people. That's fine. That's fine. You need to know that, though. Mm-hmm. Be clear about it, and don't be jealous of the person with the horse. This is just my life. Do you want to have a dog life? That's fine as well. A lot of people have those lives, and that may be the right thing for you to do. And you know what you're taking on and which dog you're going to take on. Do you want a horse life? Okay. Better know what that costs. You better know what that takes. Or the bear life, which means you might get mauled, okay? You got to figure out, how do you do a bear enclosure? That's probably not on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Like, by the way, some people are going to think you're crazy. They're going to go, why would you want a bear? Mm-hmm. You're probably going to have to hang out with some other bear owners. Yeah. Because they have similar scars to you, and they will be able to give you tips as you go on what we're learning about how to manage a bear. And so just know what you're taking on and why you're taking on. Why do I want to take on a bear life? And so when you look at, again, but not to get all switching back and forth on analogies, but we talked about climbing Everest. Some people feel provoked they have a deep desire, a drive. I want to get to the highest place in the world, literally.
Yeah.
I want to climb Everest. And some people go, I want to raise a bear. I think you need to go deep in your motivation. Why? What is motivating me to do that? Is this something that is part of my God-given wiring? It's part of something I feel like is part of a greater good type purpose. It's something I just want to take on. I want that type of life. I'll take the scars that come with it. I'll pay the price it takes to come with it. I will do the necessary obsession to do it. And I'm taking it on with my eyes wide open. Or am I doing this for some other reason, trying to validate myself? Am I doing it for some other reason? Maybe even foolishly going, yeah, dude, I want to be a bear guy. And next thing you know, you got a bear and you don't want a bear.
Yeah.
So now you're releasing it into Zanesville, and see what happens, right? Too soon. But all that to say, now you've taken on more than what you know. I think you got to count the cost of Everest. You got to count the cost of a bear life. You got to look yourself in the mirror. You got to do some introspection, and prayer. Okay, God, what do you have for me? And to make those decisions wisely. And I think, again, God calls different people to different things. He's wired different people for different things. But that's kind of what I use with her. So with Ella, our daughter, what I was really trying to do is help her count that cost. Help her really think it out instead of just sort of in an immature fashion going, I want a bear, or I want to go to Everest. Do you? Mm-hmm. Do you know what that costs to do that? Do you know how much work that is? Do you know what the risk that takes? Do you know what you'll have to say no to?
Right.
In order to say yes to that? And so that's kind of what I try to do using that analogy, and I've used it with others as well.
Yeah. Which, by the way, just before anybody comes for us in the comment section, we are in no way, shape, or form suggesting that anyone should privately own a bear. That's not what we're going for here. There's somebody that was going to be worried about that. So this is purely just an analogy.
Is it legal? It probably is legal, right?
It is in a few spots. That doesn't necessarily make it the right choice. I don't think you can in Ohio anymore.
Really?
But, because of Zanesville.
Really?
Yeah. All of those things. Yeah, prohibit. Some people got grandfathered in. There are a few small exotic animal farms around and things like that were, because their conditions were, favorable.
So it's rare but doable.
Yeah, aside from Bart the bear, he and his owner were thick as thieves. I can't think of too many great. There's that Russian guy, I don't know if he's a great example. I think he gives his bear whiskey or something. Or no, vodka. It's Russia. I think he gives it vodka.
Okay.
But anyways, all that to say, just don't want there to be any unclarity. Unclarity, is that a word? Lack of clarity.
Yeah, unclear? Yeah, I don't know.
Lack of clarity there, that we are not suggesting anyone should take on an actual
By the
bear.
way, if you get jumbled up on your words or you make any errors, I'm blaming it on the sickness. It's normally the headspace
I appreciate that, but that would be a lie to cover for me like that, because I do that all the time. I think it's worse right now. Earlier today, I meant to say electrician and I said entrepreneur. Technically, you could be both.
One amusing thing, by the way, of observing your life is because you have such a library of words and things, whenever you can't find a word,
it's mad.
You get so angry.
I get so angry.
You get very angry. You have such a great dictionary of words and thesaurus in your head that when you can't find it when you need it, it's deeply disturbing to you.
I don't know that it's because I just have some amazing library there. It's just if I have intentionally stored something and I know exactly where I put it in my brain and it's not there, that is maddening.
It's like you went to the store, you planned ahead, you put it where it was supposed to go, you needed it, you opened the cupboard, not there.
That is a perfect analogy. Exactly. And it is absolutely infuriating. So, anyways, yes, I will try not to do that too much today, but it might happen. I do feel a little fuzzier than usual. So if I ramble, just cut me off. If I say the wrong word, just fix it for me.
So what are your thoughts, by the way, on the bear life or the horse life or the whatever life? And then frankly, at some point, we probably want to talk about what that means. Like, at what point in your life do you need to get clear about that? Because especially as you create alliances, i.e., romantic relationships, marriages, have a family, and one person wants to raise a bear and one person wants to raise a goldfish. And then I don't know if that's where you're going with this conversation, but I'd be curious your reaction to the whole concept.
No, that's definitely a big part of it, and that was one of the things I was going to say. Excuse me, when I first brought it up, and you were talking, like you mentioned, if you have a dog, you have to get a dog sitter when you leave town. You're right, but you can get a dog sitter fairly easily, right? There are resources for that. Even a horse, it's harder to find somebody that knows how to take care of horses, but there are stables around, right? Like there are people that can do those things. You're not going anywhere if you have a bear. Like the people that own bears haven't taken vacation since 1976. You know what I mean? Like you're in this thing, and a bear doesn't live for, 6 years. Like you've got this thing for a hot minute, And so I think it's such a powerful analogy because it really does allow you to start breaking down, okay, what is my motivation for wanting those things and how badly do I want it and what else is it going to cost me, and actually be honest with yourself about that. I think the fact that you use that as an analogy for Ella is really great because I think that is when you should start thinking about it. I mean, I would love for every high schooler in the United States to get this analogy like freshman year, right? Because a lot of students, I think, get this message like, you have to be the best at everything. You have to, and I'm not saying don't push for excellence, but like your personal best, you know what I mean? And that isn't going to be the same as somebody else's. And I think that gets lost sometimes. So you have these kids that are picking careers that are maybe not even a great fit for them, but it just feels like, oh, what is my family going to be able to be proud of, or what is the expectation of me, and so if they they feel like if they don't follow this certain trajectory that somehow they are failing or they are less than, when the reality is that may never have been the right fit for them, and that they would thrive and be the absolute best in this other field or doing this other thing. And so I just think that it's really important to start asking that question early. I'll tell you a kind of a little bit of an aside that is pertinent to this. Something that I've been interested in lately that's caught my attention is the whole kind of traditional wife thing that's like a big thing on social media, right? And it's the cooking and the homemaking and the whatever. And you will see just thousands, sometimes even millions of women that are like, gosh, this is the life I crave. I wish I had that, whatever. And then other people far on the other side of it that have vitriol towards it, or, and then some people in between like, cool, good for you. It's not for me. And it's fascinating to me. And I saw something the other day on one of these accounts. I came across it, and someone I know who is a very, very, very successful person in their field. So she's a professional, has a amazing career, a business she started from nothing, and has become a real name for herself in her field, had commented on this like home cooking video. Gosh, this is the life I wish I had. And I thought, that's fascinating because she has like at least a horse life, if not a grizzly bear. And to anyone outside of this, she's really trained her grizzly and has it by the tail. And like, this is, has everything that people in her field would aspire to. And she's saying she would rather have that.
I wonder what was behind that statement, because I would say, it's funny, I have gone to you before, and when I was in a season of like, I'm tired of responsibility, I am fatigued, okay, and so in those times, I'm like, hey, I just want to get a Winnebago, throw my phone in a lake,
That's true,
and go off the grid and disappear. Yeah. I just want to live the simple life. I want to go live off the land. I want to go build a log cabin and go become a hermit. And you're like, that would last a month.
Yes.
Maybe less. True. And then you'd be right back to making chaos. You'd be right back in the action. You just want to break, my dude. Yeah. And so I wonder if your friend truly is living outside of her own skin and going like, all right, for whatever reason, I felt pressure to, raise a bear, but really what I really want is a golden retriever.
Right.
Or if it's like when you're scratched up by the bear and you're tired of taking care of the bear, if a golden retriever seems like a much better choice, but if you got a golden retriever,
you'd be bored out of your
you'd be going and buying a bear in a month. You know what I'm saying? Like, so is it a matter of misplaced purpose, or is it a matter of you need better rhythms and breaks, and you need a little break from a bear? You need to make some more bear, trainer friends where you guys can give each other a break and figure that part out.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent question, because I think it can be confusing sometimes. I think some people genuinely, I think both things are true. So I think some people genuinely took on a life that they felt like they should, or they felt like they had something to prove, but it was not something they were ever particularly passionate about to begin with. They were more passionate about proving, like, I'm good enough for this, I'm smart enough for this, I'm whatever. You're not going to say I'm less than because of the family I came from, or the place I came from, or whatever reason. You're not going to reduce me. And then I think some people are natural born bear trainers who are just wiped out. You took a few maulings, you're like, man, my elbow hasn't been the same since that time he ripped my arm out of socket, Yeah,
I think it's a great point, because you go, I want a bear because I want to prove that people like me can have a bear, or I want to prove to myself that I'm not just, I grew up around
everybody
dogs
just
or
had a goldfish,
and I'm like, I want to prove, like, because I saw somebody with a bear on TV. I saw somebody with a bear on social media. It looks super cool. I just want to prove I can do it. And so then they do, and then they get a bear, and they have a bear like, for a year.
Oh, shoot,
and
I have a bear.
And now they don't want a bear anymore.
Right.
And it's like, well, now we have a bear.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You're just going to abandon this bear? You're just going to whatever? And so I think that's why I talk about what I'm trying to do with Ella is help her get so comfortable in her own skin.
Yes.
That if having a bear and raising a bear and taking care of a bear if that's what is God's given her to do, and what's really in her heart, then I want her to do it, and I want her to go all in. But I don't want her to do it because she's uncomfortable with herself.
Yes.
And she's got to prove this thing or whatever.
Yes.
Like, and really come to that peace as best you can. And I mean, life is trial and error. And, I heard somebody say one time, it takes, growing up takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
Growing up takes a lifetime. So some of it is you don't even know your motive. You don't even know what it's like until you get there and you have it. And now you're going, man, I don't think I want this bear. I guess my thing is, and what I've tried to do in my life is, when you get to that place where you've taken on a big life, you got a lot going on, and it feels so heavy, and you feel weak, and you don't know if you can keep carrying it or if you want to keep carrying it. I think the question is, am I supposed to keep carrying it? And is this something that will pass when I adapt and adjust to this bear life? Is it something that I'm still growing into? Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of times people, they feel overwhelmed at the task of bear management and bear maintenance and ownership, that when it gets too heavy, then they quit.
Yeah.
They cut bait. And yet it might be like, if you stick around through the disorientation, you get to a place now you can actually, you get to where you can actually really manage what you've taken on in your life. I was just literally earlier today talking with a close friend of mine about, he's thinking about making a huge change in his life and potentially kind of quitting what he's doing to do something else. And he really was wrestling with that. Like, is it time for me to sell my bear? Mm-hmm. Is it time for me to walk away from my bear and go do this other thing? Or if I stick this out, will I settle into this into this life. And I think really trying to find out, I know we're using a bear as an analogy for real things, whether it's, businesses or projects or things that you take on. But I think to really understand what bear maintenance means and go, do I like that work? Mm-hmm. Or do I just want to be known as the person that has a bear? Because, man, she's so cool. She has a bear. She's so cool. Yeah. She's one of the bear people.
Yeah.
She's so cool. She's one of the Everest people. She's gone to the highest place.
Right.
Is that what motivates me, is being known as a bear person or being known as a Mount Everest person? Or is it truly the climb? Is it really, I love bears and taking care of them and the challenge, and that meshes with the fabric of who I am?
Yes.
Or do I need this in my reputation?
And I think that is the definitive question above all others that you have to ask yourself to get some clarity, because this question is going to hit people at different points. The reason I want every freshman in the United States to get this question posed to them is because I would love for them to be able to help figure it out before they jump into a career, before they jump into a whole lifestyle and take on a 4-year degree or gosh, way more. You think you want to be a doctor, you've got 10, and then you've got other people on the flip side of things where you've got people our age or even older that have never asked themselves this question, but maybe have felt conflicted, and so they need to be able to ask themselves and assess now on the back end of some of those big decisions. Mm-hmm. Do I want to keep doing bear work? What am I in this? I think you said it well earlier when you were talking about, am I just really tired? The reality is, you personally, you're built for bear work. You love bear work. It's who you are. If you have bear work not in front of you for long enough, you go out and make bear work, because you need your hands in it all the time. It's who you are. So that's why I always tease you when you say you want to run away in a Winnebago, and throw your phone in a lake, because I'm like, no, you want to do that for like 4 days. And then you want to go see your bear, that's just who you are. And so, you'll never be the guy, like when you're retired, you'll kind of be retired. Like you're going to have something, you're at least going to be teaching other people how to train their cubs. You're going to be doing something. But there are a lot of people that work is not attractive,
Here's the advice I would give. This is what I would give to someone who's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I would say is start with a goldfish.
Yes.
And then get a dog. And then get a bigger dog. And then get a bigger dog.
Yeah.
And then get a pony. And then get a horse.
And then get a Clydesdale.
And after having a horse and a bunch of dogs, if you're like, I want a bear, cool. But if just to go from 0 to bear,
that's
when
good.
You've never even had a goldfish, okay? Ella's like, hey, someday I want to own a business. Okay. Tell you what, I have 5,000 baseball cards.
Yep.
In the basement.
This is where we started
sitting
with
there
her.
collecting dust.
This is where we started.
I'll go halvesies with you. Every baseball card of mine you sell,
you get half.
You get 50 cents on the dollar, and I get the other 50 because they're my cards. But you're going to do the work. So I'm investing in your business. That's a goldfish. Mm-hmm. If you can't sell my baseball cards and figure out how to ship them to customers in good condition, mm-hmm. and how to manage the spreadsheet and do all that stuff, then you're not going to do some big business. Let's start here. Because getting in here and figuring all that out, if you don't like that work, you think, owning a clothing line is going to be a lot of fun?
Right.
Well, I'll have a bunch of employees. Really? You're going to go from 0 to that?
Right.
So start with it. Here's one for you. Go do this. And again, I think you start there and find out, do I like this work? I'll see people, with one of the things I do in my job is I speak, right? I'm up on a stage, I'm communicating, I'm preaching. And from time to time, I'll come in contact with someone who's like, hey, I think I want to do that. But it's like, what I'm trying to help them figure out is, are you just watching me or somebody else do this and go, wow, he really helped me or she really helped me.
And they want that feel good.
It must feel good to be up there, delivering content. It must feel good to be saying, helpful things and teaching principles and doing good. Mm-hmm. And so they're attracted to the feeling they perceive that I have.
Right.
And then, what it takes to put a message together or to put one together every single week. So they are attracted to the presentation.
Right.
But if you're going to do this job, you have to love the preparation. Because the preparation is 95% of it. The 5% is the presentation and what everybody sees. And if you don't love discovering the sermon, if you don't love mining for the sermon,
correct,
digging, chasing threads in your Bible, coming up with stuff you don't even end up using, but you're digging, collaborating, learning, researching, studying, reworking the sentence, reworking the sentence again, draft 1, draft 2, draft 3. The sermon I did Sunday, I worked on the
weeks,
4 failures of Peter and how I was going to articulate them, and I rewrote it.
More on the cutting room floor than there was even in the message.
One of them ended up a typo on the screen because I changed it a couple hours before because I wanted to get it perfect. I love that work.
Yes, and that was actually one of the things I was going to say, that when I say like you love the bear work, that is an aspect of the bear work. You don't even really, I wouldn't say you dislike presenting on a Sunday. You don't dislike it. But that is such a minor part of it for you.
I like the presentation. I love the preparation.
Correct. And I have watched you just immerse yourself and get so much excitement out of it, and coming and showing me things you found and want to discuss it. And we have your cousin come stay with us, every month or so. And it's a few days of just like, but primarily you two, but somewhat the three of us like working things out together, absolutely, talking through, and it's just these notstop threads.
It's highly energetic.
Months-long conversations about a single message for you.
It's like seeing hearing a great song or seeing someone win a Grammy or something and going, I want to be a songwriter.
And you have no idea.
Dude, no, it's like, do you love to write songs? Because you should be willing to write 1,000 bad songs.
Right.
In order to write
one banger.
A good one. Yep. Then you got to write 100 good songs, and then you write one great one. You know what I'm saying? Like, and those numbers probably aren't right, but you get the idea.
No, but your point stands. Your point stands, and it really is about being in love with the work. And I think that in a lot of areas of our lives, you just bring up a great point, because whether it's jobs that seem glamorous to us or even lifestyles, right? Like some people really glamorize marriage. They romanticize marriage and kids and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's not great. You and I have been together for 20 years, and I'm really glad. But it is work.
We've had 1,000 fights for every photo op.
There you go.
And a lot of people start with the photo op. I want that photo op.
Yeah.
But are you willing to do to have the fights that it takes to have a relationship as good as what we have?
Yes.
I mean, I've had people say to me, hey, you guys are goals. And I'm going to be honest, like, we have a great marriage. Like, it's not perfect. We're human beings. But I'm not just saying it because, like, that looks cool to people. I can't imagine a better marriage than we have. We have a really amazing marriage. But we have fought so hard for it.
Yeah.
Like, consistently, like, we bring problems up. We have hard conversations. We do go to bed angry sometimes, okay? And you wake up, I know the Bible says don't go to bed angry. I've tried to not, but whatever. I've gone to bed angry, and then we've brought it up again and brought it up again, and we keep working our way through it. So for every photo op, there's 1,000 fights that we were willing to have and keep having, so that we can bludgeon this problem to death, so that we can keep maturing this relationship, so we can keep earning and re-earning each other's trust.
Right.
And so to go, well, I just want to have the photo op, or I want to have the cute marriage, or I want to have goals. You got to understand the work that it takes to get there.
Right.
No two people are so compatible in a relationship
that it's just flawless. Yeah.
Nobody.
No.
All you'll have is a cute little surface relationship. If you're going to have the real depth of emotional intimacy and deep levels of trust and connection, you got to be willing to do that work to get there, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, again, it's looking at your life, and I do think picking, like having the kind of dialogue before you even fully commit to each other, to whether you use the bear analogy or horse or whatever it is, to kind of figure out what kind of life do you want to have?
Yeah.
Because that will affect what kind of lifestyle you're going to have.
And I think it's really important for people to hear and understand there is absolutely nothing wrong or less than with wanting a goldfish, a dog, or a horse life.
No.
The bear, like that is the whole point of the analogy.
Absolutely.
It's not to glorify the bear. Like some people are built for it, and that's great for them. Like everybody else is going to think they're nuts. That's fine.
What a mistake if you honestly look and go, I really want a dog life, or I really want to feel some pressure to go buy a bear. Like that's not good for you or the bear.
No, it's not. And I here's another example of that just came to my mind. I have a friend that I am so happy for right now because she is finding her sweet spot. She was in a very high-powered career previously. She just left it, and she's a stay-at-home mom right now. She's got like a side business that she's running, but it's much smaller scale than anything that she's dealt with before. That's been kind of hard for her in some ways, but she's like, Shaylyn, I love it. She's like, I sat out and colored with sidewalk chalk with my daughter for like an hour the other day. We just sat and colored with sidewalk chalk. That's what in her heart of hearts she really wanted. I think there were parts of her, if you asked her honestly, I think there were parts of her that felt like she had to prove she was capable of a bear. Mm-hmm. And she is. She absolutely is. But that doesn't mean that just because you can, that that's what you love and that would be a peaceful, beautiful life for you.
I think it's also, I'd love to hear you continue to talk a little bit about this from a female perspective, because I do think it's different from a female perspective.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, like you said, a woman puts out a video or puts out content of her doing something that would be a traditional, gender role type of, like you said, living off the land, cooking, cleaning, whatever. And some people are like, that is so awesome, so beautiful, we need to push that out there. And then others are like, no way. And then again, others that would be out there, doing the non-traditional female thing, right? They're out there starting a business, so they're out there doing something that would be considered to be more masculine, and some people shaming people for that, and maybe some people even carrying false guilt because they're going, well, this is what women ought to be doing, this or that, or we need to get back to this or that. And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on processing it, but I think like what's in my heart is encouraging people to really wrestle to the ground the pressures around them, to free themselves from those things and to really discover who God has made them to be. Mm-hmm. And then without guilt,
yes,
to be able to pursue what that is.
Yes.
And to not feel like if sidewalk chalk with your kids or making food from scratch is really what lights you up, and it brings you great joy and peace and comfort and fulfillment, then you should do that, and nobody makes you feel like, you're less than.
No.
But if you're like, honestly, sidewalk chalk sounds like a nightmare. Making my own food from scratch is about the last thing I want to do. Right. And yet I want to come over here and do this other thing to feel the freedom to be who God's made you to be, and to wrestle where are these pressures coming from in the healthiest way to find who you are, and then guilt-free live that thing to your full potential.
What I think is sad is that the worst of it is women on women like that. That it's, sure, there are some nasty men in the comments or whatever, but honestly, it's women right now more than anything that just tear each other apart no matter what decision someone makes.
Where do you think that's coming from? Like, do you think so? Let's say a woman who really feels strongly about the traditional position for women. Do you think they're thinking that by criticizing a woman for not doing that they are like they're setting that woman free in some way, or that they're
holding the line, right? Excuse me, on something like it's an integrity issue.
So that you would not have, they would think that if you want to work outside the home, or you want to do something that's not
your place, that's not something you should be doing, and that they should speak out on it. I also think that there are some women who, if they were really honest with themselves, they see other women doing some things they wish they could have done, especially some of the older women. I think I see this, and it makes me sad for them, honestly. Like, almost, gosh, a little tear up sad. Because I think that they externalize some anger onto some of these younger women because they see them having some opportunities that they wish they could have taken. When it comes to, like, working outside the home or whatever, especially on that side of things. Or maybe even some women who ended up as single moms or something in, especially like 60s, 70s, 80s, at a time when it was a lot harder to be a single. I'm not saying it's easy now, but you get my point. Like, there was just a level of, like, not support for that.
And I have a thought for you, but I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay. I'll finish this real quick. But my point being, I think some of these older women, especially 50 and above, they feel like a large portion of their life has passed them by, and they didn't get to act out on some of the dreams that they had. And so when they see younger women just going for it, there's a piece of them that feels like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, know your place. If I didn't get to, you don't get to. It's like the crabs crawling out of the pot, right? And pulling each other back down. And I think it's really unfortunate because they wouldn't say it, and I don't think some of them are even conscious of it. I think that they have just kind of internalized all those feelings and pushed it down and covered it with some form of morality or whatever that feels a little better and feels a little more righteous. But it comes from a place of real pain for them.
You know, I was studying a few years ago. I lost track of time, so I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was that story of Mary and Martha in the Bible where Jesus goes over to the house, and Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, and Martha comes out, and she's super ticked.
Yeah.
Because she's made this big meal, and now there's all these dishes, and it was a bunch of people that were over. It wasn't just Jesus and his 12 disciples. It was like a bunch. So there's this huge mess, and Mary's sitting at Jesus' feet, and Martha's like, Jesus, tell her to get up and help me. You know?
Why are you here in this setting that would have historically been just men at that time? Like, women didn't really have the right to go sit in a learning situation like that at the feet of a rabbi, a teacher, whatever. Your place is in the kitchen with me. Yeah.
Yeah, and often that story is told because Jesus says, Martha, Martha, Mary's chosen correctly, and it will not be taken away from her. And so that message traditionally has been taught as kind of like, be present. And even Martha is portrayed as this kind of Enneagram 2, need to be needed, the one in here doing all the tasks, and, all that. And when I really looked at that story a couple years ago, I started to think, like, looking at the context, Martha's options were so limited. She couldn't start her own business. She was illiterate, likely.
Yep.
She didn't have a chance to go all the way through college or, go through school. At a certain age, young women they're homemakers, whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah.
And so she had to watch her brother and maybe other guys who had less aptitude than she had. Because she's, no question, what we see in the text. Strong personality. Yeah. I mean, she bossing Jesus around multiple times. She goes in, Jesus, tell her to do this. When he shows up at Lazarus' grave, she barks at him.
Yeah,
and she's like, what are you doing?
Fault.
How come? I mean, so This is a woman with a lot of initiative, proactive, strong personality, probably a lot of ideas, probably a lot of vision. And so when I looked at it the last time, I thought this probably isn't somebody who loved being in the home doing this and was mad that she didn't have help. It might have been a woman who had, in that culture and in that system, was limited with options and probably had some underlying frustration.
Yep.
And now, in the court in the temple, women couldn't go sit in these places. They had the women's court. So now here's Jesus, the ultimate rabbi, and my sister has the audacity to go plop down at his feet in the most important position, the closest position to him. And so her going after her sister, in many ways, probably had less to do with her wanting help in cleanup as it did her frustration
with her place.
What kind of audacity do you have? Who do you think you are to go sit at his feet and to go have the choice place when my whole life I've been told what to do and what I had to do? Yeah. And I wonder in some ways with like you said, maybe some women who had aspirations of their own that they thought that, you don't get to have those dreams.
Yes.
You don't get to that that's not for you. Yeah. That now in some way, instead of being happy for Mary or
joining her,
frankly, Jesus had 2 feet.
Right.
And Mary was sitting at one of them, maybe in a different headspace. If she had asked Jesus a question, instead of powering up, he'd invited her to the same spot. And so you almost wonder, it's a good point that you made. I wonder if in some ways there are people, whether it's, again, we're talking particularly about, women and how they pursue, come to peace with who they are and live that without guilt. But I wonder if often people do that, right? You go, actually, if I have to kill my dreams, so do you.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we're speaking specifically of women in this context, but I think that that's true for a lot of people in a lot of contexts. And sometimes they don't even realize that it's under there.
It would be easy to miss it.
Yeah.
It would be easy to go.
And I think it's a hard one to look in the face.
Yeah. It would be easy to come to the conclusion that, no, this is what we do. This is noble to lay down your dreams and to do this because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes, in some instances, that sort of sacrifice or doing that thing is the right thing to do. But it isn't always.
Right.
And to be that clear-headed and clear-hearted, to be able to be objective and to step back and go, am I just superimposing this on the next generation because that's what was given to me? Or is this really actually something that I can give a gift of freedom to somebody else?
Yep.
And something that I wasn't given. That would be a hard one to work your way through.
It is, and I've had little slivers of that I've found in myself that I've had to pick out. That I go, that's ugly. I don't like it, and I have to address it head on. And I think, I think it's just a common thing that a lot of people experience. But
I think it's a challenge in mentoring because it's one of those things. Like I'm on some like church planting leadership committee things and whatever. And so, we planted, One Church, was 13 years ago, something like that. And so when we did, things were a certain kind of way. And I look back at my journey and like a lot of it was extremely hard. And we had to carve certain things out and we took the hard path. And I look back and I'm like, man, that was so good. Like what came of that was deep. And it was formational for me as a human being, as a leader, as a pastor. Like that journey in many ways made me who I am, or at least in part. And so in these church planting groups that are funding church plants and stuff, I've sort of a couple times brought up like, hey, let's be careful. We don't just give people this fast pass past hardship and struggle, thinking that we're helping them by just buying their way into the next level, because every step of the journey is part of that growth. But I've wrestled with it a little bit, and I'm like, is this me kind of superimposing a rite of passage on entrepreneurial people?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I think your instincts are on the money. There's a reason that you don't. When a chick is hatching out of an egg, you don't help it. You don't, only in a very extreme case, if they were like on the verge of death, you don't crack the egg open for them. Why? Because they build the strength that they need through the process of breaking out of the egg to be able to walk, to be able to function. That's their first foray into strength, right? Mm-hmm. To face the rest of their lives. You feel like you're helping. You're not helping. Same thing with sea turtles. You can't, carry the sea turtle to the ocean. It's as bad as you want to. You hate seeing them struggle through this like awful gauntlet they go through. But as part of them mapping out how to come back there as an adult and lay their own eggs. Yeah. It's hard to watch struggle. It's hard to watch your kids struggle. It's hard to watch people you love struggle. It's hard to watch people that are taking on the same dream that you had as an entrepreneur, as a church planter, whatever. You want to save them some of the struggle that you went through because you know how hard the journey is. That desire, I think, is healthy. And sure, there are some really important pieces of information that you can pass on that help them have good tools, to navigate the hard times. But you can't take away the hard times from people because you really are handicapping their strength in the long run.
It's funny, playing off the bear analogy, that's kind of been my concern, is like somebody shows up and says, I want a bear, and we just give them the money to buy a bear. Right. And it's like, no, I'm going to give you the money to buy a goldfish. Right. Or I'll give you money to buy a dog, and then you're going to have to sell your dog and buy a horse, and then you're going to have to sell your horse and buy a bear. Like, right. Now they're really going to come after us. Yeah. No disrespect to your animals. You get the idea. Like the idea is like, if you skip process, right. Okay, you lose what you get in the process. Some of that is self-esteem. Some of that is self-confidence. Some of that is experience, hard-earned. Some of that's wisdom and judgment.
Sure.
You learn
how to make judgment. That's what I was going
to
say, the judgment on making decisions because you've had to make the tough calls. For sure. Sorry, keep going. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where I think if we go back to the whole, like, Mary and Martha, and like you said, like, hey, I didn't get this, so therefore you don't either. I think that's the tension you've got to kind of sit in, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going, hey, I didn't get these opportunities, and there's a bit of jealousy inside of me that if I had these limited options, so do you. Right. And I don't want to sit here and watch you get all these opportunities I didn't get. Yeah. Whereas that's one end of the tension. The other end is that there are some lessons and strength that you can't circumvent the process. Mm-hmm. You have to walk through it. You've got to feel it. You've got to taste the blood in your mouth. You've got to have the scars. You've got to walk that stuff through to where you really understand it and you've learned the lesson. And I think that's where, again, with some of these things around whether it's women and how they should treat or think about other women, is this me kind of jealous or holding a line that no longer needs to be held? Yeah. And I have an opportunity to give someone a gift that either wasn't available to me or the people around me didn't give me, but I can give it. Mm-hmm. Or is this me with wisdom helping somebody to walk through a process, learning how to wait their turn, learning how to take steps instead of going from zero to bear?
Yeah. I really think it is. I think that only applies if you're directly in a position of mentorship for somebody, right? Or a boss or whatever. If you're just Joe Schmo on the internet, you don't have a say, and you don't need to just, I think most of our moms taught us, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. If you don't like their lifestyle, if you don't like that they stay home and have kids, and
keep it to yourself, bro.
It's not affecting you. No. Move on. Unfollow, block it so it doesn't show up on your feed. That's on you if you can't handle it. Same thing with a woman that's out here doing something else with her life that is a big career thing or whatever. If that really bothers you and you feel like she needs to be at home, not your business. Like, move on.
Be smart enough to know you're making so many assumptions that you have no clue
So
about.
many assumptions, which we could go into all of that. Like people, that was the other one that drives me crazy is people go, must be nice. You don't know what these people have sacrificed to have the life that they have. So to assume that it fell into their lap on either side of that spectrum is completely inappropriate. Also, by the way, side note, I don't think women are the only one that deal with this. I think it's historically, if we're sticking to the analogy, women have been expected to have a goldfish or a dog life and to want that. And men have been expected to have and want a horse or a grizzly bear. And the reality is, everybody's a human. Everybody's been designed differently by God. They're all individuals. There's not some like blanket thing that fits someone based on, their given gender. And so the idea that is the determining factor of what you should take on is ridiculous. You might be a man who's like, man, I just want a dog life. I want a simple life. I don't want this big, overly complicated thing. I want my 9 to 5. I don't want to start something new. Like, I want to be a company man. I want to start somewhere and retire from them and get my watch in 30 years, And they want a very, very simple existence. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. If that's what you were made for, and that's what brings you peace and joy and a sense of fulfillment, and that you're looking back from your deathbed and you go, that was a beautiful existence. Good. That's what you were meant to live. And then there are women out there who were...
Well, it's like Martin Luther King, by the way, when he said he has the whole street sweeper speech where he's like, whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you take on, if you're a street sweeper,
sweep with all your might.
The street's so good that they go, this is the street that the greatest street sweeper ever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, to go, whatever, if you take on the goldfish, man, have that goldfish in some clean water. Like, own it. Like, own it fully. It does, have the impact you have where you have it.
Yes.
Don't let what someone has set and defined as a great life to be the one size fits all for everyone. But whatever you do it as unto the Lord and not unto men, right? Ultimately.
Right. And Greg, that's such a great point. It makes me think of this clip. I don't know if you saw it. It kind of went viral. It was on the Today Show. This man that drives a city bus. Did you see this? No. This man drives a city bus. I want to say it was in England, but maybe it could have been New York or something, because it was a double-decker bus, right? This man just drives a bus around the city all day. And he goes by his own home, his own apartment, that's up several floors, clearly from the video, at a certain time every day. And he knows his wife will go to the window, and so he goes by that window, turns the light on in his cab, because it's dark outside, so she can see him, and he waves to her every single day. That man has a beautiful, full life. Now, it ended up on the Today Show and going viral, but that wasn't why he did anything that he did. It is a person who is living fully in their purpose, and he's making a huge impact.
People get to work. He's
doing
creating
good
consistency for people. He's doing his job well. He's getting them there on time. He's getting them there safely.
Exactly.
He's building relationships with people that.
And then his wife, what kind of impact is he making with her? At the end of his life, how much pride would he have in the relationship that he's clearly built? This consistency in the way that he showed up for her. That's clearly just a microcosm.
By the way, how many people sat on the bus, didn't say a word, watched him honor his wife, watched him connect with his wife and back and forth every day, and went, you know what? How am I doing?
Yeah.
How am I showing love to my loved ones?
That's right.
And probably never said to him walking off the bus, hey, actually, God really used you today in my life to ask me, force me to ask myself a tough question. The impact, incredible, by him, again, now picking what would be probably a less complicated life. Mm-hmm. In the analogy, it might be a Chihuahua or a Beagle.
Some dog life.
In terms of organizing it and whatever, and the amount of complexity and stress and pressure and whatever, but not a smaller life.
No,
a
not by
life.
any stretch of the imagination.
And for you to take and go, I'm going to take this life and I'm going to make it everything it's supposed to be.
Yes.
That's the point.
Yes.
I hope that rings through this.
Yeah.
Is what I'm not saying is everybody with the bear is cool and everybody with less than a bear is less than. That's not it. It's literally stepping back and going, all these animals are God's creation.
They're all valuable.
Which one am I supposed to take on?
Correct. And that is a great place to end it, Greg, because that is the crux of it all, is every single one of these things is equally valuable. It's a different type of work with each and every one. And you just have to know what you're geared for, what you're drawn to, what you're built for, and find the life that is really fulfilling and beautiful and whole for you. And don't let anyone judge you from goldfish to bear. When you're sure that you've got the right fit for you, what anyone else thinks about the level of whatever that it is does not matter. Whether they think you're crazy for taking on a bear or they think you're not doing enough with a goldfish. No. If it's the right thing for you, it's the right thing, period. Final thought.
Yeah, my summary thought would be, if you come to that sort of peace in your own heart, that sort of clarity around how God has made you and how that connects to your purpose, I think it puts you in the headspace to not feel any need to be ashamed of your animal or to try to tear somebody down with a, quote, bigger animal because somehow their bear makes you feel weird about your beagle. Like, your beagle is what God's given you, is a great gift. Mm-hmm. And that's, you need to be so focused on that you don't feel, and I think if you feel that twinge of jealousy or somehow you got to tear that down, that's just telling you that you haven't fully come to peace with what God's given you, and somehow you're putting a valuation on these animals.
Yeah.
And I think what we would all do is
mock someone with a smaller animal than you.
I was going to get there, but I appreciate you helping me get there faster. So that was my point. You wouldn't get a big head with your bear, and you wouldn't feel insignificant with a beagle. It's all these animals we would say are God's sacred creations, right? Yeah. And we'd say we wouldn't say one is better than the other, but we would say some are bigger than others. It's a bigger thing. It's a more complex.
It's more to take on.
But to go to find that peace, I think it's a huge part of your quality of life. I do think it makes the world a better place. So we're not attacking each other, whatever. We're owning what we have and doing it to the best of our ability. It's a way we worship God. And I think encouraging people to think those things through and fully embrace them.
Well, thanks for taking the time to unpack it. There's a lot in there.
Yep. Good stuff. Thanks for the talk.
See you next week.
Hope you get to feeling better.
Me too.